Well, let's look more at the impact this outbreak is having on the sporting world with Daniel Kelly, who joins us from New York. He's the Academic Director of Graduate Programs at the Preston Robert Tisch Institute for Global Sport, which is part of NYU's School of Professional Studies. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with the latest on what's happening with the biggest global sporting event this year, the Olympics. What sort of considerations are we looking at?
For the most part, the Olympics are going through a situation of flux. Right now, Thomas Bach has convened back in February a task force that is charged with figuring out exactly what is happening with the coronavirus and what are the next steps for implications when it comes to travel, for the athletes' protection, and for what's going on with the overall games. On this task force is the IOC, led by Bach, is the Tokyo Olympic Committee, is the host committee for Tokyo Games, is the Japanese government, plus the World Health Organization. And so overall, they are communicating and figuring out the best steps forward for the Olympic Games.
Now, I want to look at something to do with contracts, especially when you have a lot of advertisers planning these things in advance. Force majeure clauses in contracts release parties from their respective obligations if there's a catastrophic or unexpected occurrence that prevents them from fulfilling those obligations. Is that something that we can expect advertisers and organizers to start exploring?
Seiko Hashimoto, who is Japan's Olympic minister, she has tried to figure out a way to quell the disaster or to, put a remedy to the situation by stating that the Olympic Games, based on the contract with the IOC, should be held sometime in 2020, which does give a bit of leeway in case the games were to be postponed to later in the year. But overall, the message from the task force with Thomas Bach has been overly optimistic that the games will be held the same time from July 24th through August 9th of 2020.
So then how are various sports leagues around the world handling the outbreak and the potential fallout in terms of their bottom line?
I know right now the Serie A in Italy is probably the most proactive. They are still holding their games. Inter Milan, of course, is playing games right now with no spectators, and that has been a very big push for their lack of financial stability. They had an opportunity. Steven Zhang had the opportunity to move the game to Juventus' hometown in Turin, but instead chose not to do the game because he decided to put public health over profitability.
So then in terms of the athletes themselves, talk about who's been affected so far and what sort of precautions that others are taking right now.
I think the biggest thing is not getting sick for the athletes. Trying to make sure that they are continuing with their competitive spirit as well as their training methods so that they peak in time for the games. With the lack of knowledge about the games and the understanding of when the games will occur, the qualifying, I think right now a lot of anxiety for the athletes as they try to find a sense of normalcy as they prepare for the games later on in the year.
Obviously, we have a huge tournament coming up, March Madness, a major tournament in college basketball. Do we know what those games usually bring to the table, these participating schools and to local businesses?
The economic impact for a weekend can be in the millions. I would say close to 300 to 400,000 with hotel revenue, restaurants, airplane travel, tourism, and the activities that surround the spectacle of March Madness. The coronavirus is having an impact as the number of cases in the United States are increasing. And the Spokane region has probably the most cases in the U.S., and that is one of the regions that the NCAA is probably going to keep a close eye on when it comes to the spectators.
And as we mentioned, some of these sports being played without any spectators in these closed environments. How prepared are sporting arenas and leagues around the U.S. to offer some perhaps immersive or virtual experiences for fans who aren't able to attend?
In the U.S., the digital platforms and live streaming are becoming more popular. I know right now the NBA and the MLB have been proactive with reaching out with memos to the players and staff about how to interact with fans, to be protective when it comes to receiving items from the fans, whether they be basketballs or memorabilia, and to be careful not to touch them. And so the players have been provided with pens and markers, and they're trying to be very vigilant when it comes to player safety when interacting with the fan base.
So going forward, just quickly, if you had one top concern that you think the sports industry is going to face as a result of this virus, what would that be?
I would say the lack of engagement. Borussia Dortmund out of the Bundesliga is not going to take their Asian tour this summer. Now, that's a lot of missed social media engagement. That's a lot of missed opportunities to engage with their fan bases in China, South Korea, as well as Japan. And so with the lack of revenue and the lack of boots on the ground in those locations is going to impact their fiscal. And so if you transfer that to other teams and clubs around the world who are going to probably avoid certain parts of the world, most likely Asia, is going to have a negative impact on their financials.
All right, thank you so much. Daniel Kelly II there, Academic Director of Graduate Programs at the Preston Robert Tisch Institute for Global Sport at NYU.